The Alexandria federal courthouse plunged into stunned silence as Judge Anthony Trenga brought his gavel down with uncharacteristic force, announcing an unprecedented $500 million fine against the world's richest man, Elon Musk. At the defense table, Musk sat perfectly still, his legal team frantically sorting through documents as the cameras captured every second. What had begun as a seemingly routine hearing had erupted into a landmark decision, sending shockwaves through both the legal and business worlds. As Judge Trenga delivered a scathing rebuke of Musk's blatant disregard for regulatory procedures, something entirely unexpected occurred. Calmly, Musk reached for a document, a piece of evidence prepared months earlier, that would turn what seemed like a straightforward judgment into one of the most dramatic courtroom reversals in modern history. If you want to see how power, justice, and truth collide at the highest levels, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any updates on this developing story. Judge Anthony Trenga had presided over federal cases in Virginia's Eastern District for nearly 2 decades. Appointed by President George W. Bush in 2008, he had earned a reputation as a no-nonsense judge who held everyone, from everyday citizens to powerful executives, to the same uncompromising standards. Now 72, with silver hair and a piercing gaze that unsettled even seasoned attorneys, Trenga had become a symbol of courtroom rigor. The case against Musk had been building for months. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, had filed a sweeping complaint accusing Musk of deliberately misleading investors about the production status of Tesla's new Austin plant. While Musk publicly claimed the facility was fully operational and exceeding targets, internal documents told a different story, one of production delays and persistent technical issues. Musk's statements had sent Tesla's stock soaring, adding billions to its market value. According to the SEC, this amounted to securities fraud on an unprecedented scale. Lead prosecutor Catherine Reynolds told reporters bluntly, "No one, no matter how wealthy or powerful, is above securities law." Throughout the preliminary hearings, Judge Trenga's frustration grew increasingly visible. Musk's cavalier behavior, including arriving late to a hearing due to supposed issues with his private jet, drew the judge's ire, with Trenga threatening contempt charges. Requests from Musk's attorneys for repeated extensions were swiftly denied. "Billionaires don't get special scheduling accommodations in this courtroom," Trenga declared. Publicly, Musk struck a tone of defiance. On his platform X, he posted memes mocking the SEC, dubbing it the Short Seller Enrichment Commission, and implying the case was politically motivated. When asked by reporters about the allegations, Musk merely smiled and said, "The truth will come out in court." Privately, however, Musk had assembled a formidable legal team led by veteran securities attorney Michael Friedman. Unlike Musk's brash public persona, Friedman took a much more sober view of the situation, warning his client that Judge Trenga would not be easily swayed or intimidated. The business world watched with bated breath. If Musk were found guilty and hit with such a colossal penalty, it could usher in a new era of regulatory crackdowns on executive communications. Wall Street analysts debated Tesla's future and the broader implications for Musk's empire. When the final hearing arrived, the courtroom overflowed with journalists, legal scholars, and curious onlookers. Judge Trenga entered precisely at 9 a.m., his face giving away nothing. Without preamble, Trenga went straight to the point. He summarized the SEC's allegations and the defense's arguments, then locked eyes with Musk and delivered his ruling, his voice steady and resolute. "This court finds that Mr. Musk knowingly made materially misleading statements regarding the production capabilities at Tesla's Austin facility," Trenga declared, his words booming through the tense, silent courtroom. Judge Trenga's voice rang through the silent courtroom. "These statements directly influenced market valuations and investor decisions in a manner that constitutes securities fraud under established precedent." Cameras caught the shift in Elon Musk's expression, from confident to visibly unsettled, as Trenga continued, his tone sharpening. "The scale of this violation is extraordinary. Mr. Musk's statements impacted billions of dollars in market value." He paused briefly, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. Moreover, this court finds particularly troubling the defendant's cavalier attitude throughout these proceedings, suggesting a belief that he is somehow exempt from the regulatory framework governing our financial markets. Musk leaned toward his attorney to whisper, but Trenga swiftly raised his hand, cutting off the exchange. "I am therefore imposing a civil penalty of $500 million, he announced firmly. "Payment is due within 30 days. An audible gasp rippled through the courtroom. It was one of the largest civil penalties ever handed down in an SEC case. SEC attorneys exchanged satisfied glances, while Catherine Reynolds began gathering her files, the weight of their victory sinking in. Media representatives slipped quietly from the courtroom, racing to be the first to break the news that would shake global financial markets. Meanwhile, Musk's legal team huddled around him in urgent conversation. Michael Friedman stood, his voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, we respectfully request the opportunity to present exculpatory evidence that directly contradicts the SEC's core claims." Judge Trenga frowned. "Mr. Friedman, you've had ample opportunity to present evidence. The time for new submissions has passed." But Friedman pressed on. "Your Honor, this evidence was only made available to us 3 days ago, through a whistleblower within the SEC. We believe it was deliberately withheld in violation of discovery rules." A ripple of tension ran through the SEC's legal team. Reynolds immediately rose. "Your Honor, that's an outrageous allegation without foundation." "Ms. Reynolds," Trenga interrupted sharply, "you'll have your chance to respond." Turning back to Friedman, his expression serious, Trenga said, "This is an extraordinary claim, counsel. What specifically do you allege was withheld?" For the first time since the judgment, Musk moved, reaching into his briefcase and handing several documents to Friedman, who then approached the bench. "Your Honor, these are internal SEC emails and analysis reports. They show that Tesla's Austin facility was indeed meeting the production targets Mr. Musk publicly stated." "Friedman," said Judge Trenga, silently reviewed the documents. His face gave little away, but the intensity of his focus was unmistakable. The courtroom remained utterly still. Friedman continued. "Furthermore, these communications show senior SEC officials were aware of this contradiction but pursued the case anyway, apparently for reasons unrelated to securities law enforcement." Reynolds rushed forward, her voice strained. "Your Honor, without reviewing what counsel is presenting, I can't respond in detail. However, I categorically deny any misconduct." Trenga looked up slowly, his gaze now like ice. "These appear to be authentic SEC communications, Ms. Reynolds," he said, his voice low but cutting. "They include your name on several exchanges discussing the discrepancy between the SEC's internal findings and its public allegations." The color drained from Reynolds's face. "Your Honor, I would need to—" Trenga cut her off, reading aloud from one of the emails. "Despite the technical team's assessment that production numbers align with Musk's statements, we should proceed with fraud charges as planned. The deterrent value alone justifies the case." A murmur swelled through the courtroom. Reporters who had been rushing to file stories about the fine scrambled back to their seats, realizing the true story was only just beginning to unfold. Musk remained seated, unusually composed, his demeanor a sharp contrast to his typically brash public persona. This time he let the legal process do the talking. Meanwhile, Reynolds scrambled to salvage the crumbling case. "Your Honor," Reynolds began, her voice taut, "single emails taken out of context don't reflect the comprehensive basis for our case. There were numerous factors." "Ms. Reynolds," Judge Trenga cut her off sharply, "are you denying that your technical team concluded Tesla's production claims were substantively accurate?" Reynolds hesitated, just long enough for the silence to become damning. "The situation is more complex than—" Trenga turned to his clerk. "We'll recess for 30 minutes. I intend to review these documents thoroughly. When we return, Ms. Reynolds, I expect a full explanation for why these materials were not disclosed during discovery." The judge left the bench and the courtroom immediately erupted into a low roar of conversation. Musk turned to Friedman, speaking just loud enough for nearby journalists to catch. "I don't want to destroy the SEC. I just want the truth to come out." The words, delivered with calm precision, struck harder than any outburst. Cameras captured Musk's composed demeanor, a striking contrast to his usual public bravado, as the weight of a potential regulatory scandal loomed larger. When Judge Trenga returned, 40 minutes later, 10 minutes beyond the scheduled recess, his expression was grim, his movements deliberate. The room fell into a tense, expectant silence. Adjusting his microphone, he began, "Having reviewed the documents submitted by the defense, I find substantial evidence of serious discovery violations and potential misconduct by the Securities and Exchange Commission." Murmurs rippled across the courtroom. "These documents," Trenga continued, "directly contradict central claims made by the SEC. Of particular concern are internal communications suggesting that officials within the SEC pursued this case despite technical assessments supporting Mr. Musk's public statements." He paused, letting the significance sink in. "More troubling still is evidence that exculpatory materials were deliberately withheld from the defense." Musk sat stone still, his usual expressive nature replaced with a sober focus. Trenga's voice sharpened. "In light of this evidence, the court has no choice but to vacate the judgment issued earlier today." An audible wave of gasps and whispered conversations broke out. Reporters scrambled again, now not to report a penalty, but a potential scandal. "Furthermore," Trenga said, his voice rising over the murmurs, "I am ordering an immediate investigation into the SEC's handling of this case, including potential violations of discovery obligations and ethical standards." Reynolds stood quickly, her voice tight with urgency. "Your Honor, the Commission respectfully requests time to conduct its own internal review before further actions are taken. We take these matters—" "Ms. Reynolds," Trenga interrupted, now barely concealing his anger. "An internal SEC review would be wholly inappropriate. The Commission itself is implicated." The room held its breath. "I am referring this matter to the Department of Justice's Office of Professional Responsibility for Independent Investigation." The implication was unmistakable. This was no longer just about Musk or Tesla. It was about possible systemic misconduct inside one of America's most powerful regulatory bodies. Across the SEC's table, several attorneys exchanged anxious glances. "Judge," Trenga wasn't finished. "Mr. Musk," he said, turning back, "while this evidence undermines the SEC's case against you, let me be clear. This court's criticism of regulatory misconduct should not be mistaken as endorsement of reckless communications by corporate executives. Rules exist to protect investors and maintain the integrity of our markets." Musk nodded solemnly, a gesture of respect that surprised many, given his well-known clashes with regulators. "Your Honor," Musk said, rising slowly, "may I address the court?" Trenga studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. What followed stunned everyone in the room. Instead of the brash, triumphant remarks many anticipated, Musk spoke with measured humility. "I want to thank this court for its commitment to finding the truth." The courtroom, still buzzing with tension moments earlier, fell into an awed, almost reverent silence. Musk began, his voice steady. "While I'm relieved that evidence has emerged proving Tesla's statements were factually accurate," he said, "I also recognize that my communication style has at times created unnecessary confusion and controversy." The courtroom stayed utterly silent, journalists scribbling furiously to capture every word of this unexpected turn. "This experience," Musk continued, pausing as he seemed to weigh each word carefully, "has been a profound lesson in the responsibility that comes with leading public companies. Companies in which millions of people invest their savings and trust." He drew a slow breath. "While I will always be direct with the public, I now understand more than ever the impact my words can have." Then, turning to the SEC attorneys, Musk added, "Despite our differences, I believe in the importance of your mission to protect investors. I hope that going forward, we can find a better way to work together toward that shared goal." There was a raw sincerity in his voice that filled the room, a tone so genuine that even seasoned court reporters noted the shift. Some later said that Judge Trenga, known for his famously stoic bench demeanor, appeared momentarily overcome. his eyes glistening before he composed himself once more. "This court appreciates your statement, Mr. Musk," Trenga said at last, his voice softer, almost reflective. "It demonstrates a maturity that, frankly, has not always been evident in your public communications." Turning to address the packed courtroom, Trenga offered his final remarks. "What we have witnessed today transcends the specifics of this case. It highlights both the fragility and the resilience of our system of justice, how it can be threatened by improper actions, but also how truth, when given the opportunity, can prevail." With that, he officially vacated the $500 million judgment against Musk and ordered a comprehensive review of the SEC's handling of the case. As Judge Trenga rose from the bench, the entire courtroom stood with him, not just in deference to his authority, but in deep respect for his commitment to follow the truth wherever it led. Cameras captured the historic moment, including a rare, humanizing glimpse of Judge Anthony Trenga, the famously by-the-book federal judge, wiping a single tear from the corner of his eye before exiting. The aftermath of the confrontation between Musk, the SEC, and Judge Trenga quickly reverberated beyond the Alexandria federal courthouse. By evening, the dramatic reversal dominated the news cycle. Legal analysts called it a watershed moment for regulatory oversight and a case study in judicial integrity. Financial markets reacted just as swiftly. Tesla's stock, which had plummeted after initial reports of the massive fine, rebounded sharply as news of the court's reversal spread. But the implications stretched far beyond one company's share price. Within 48 hours, the Department of Justice announced a formal investigation into the SEC's conduct. 3 senior officials, including Catherine Reynolds, were placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. The White House issued a pointed statement, reaffirming its commitment to regulatory enforcement that is both vigorous and scrupulously fair. For Musk, it marked a profound turning point. At his first public appearance after the hearing, a technology conference in Austin, he struck a noticeably different tone. "This experience," Musk said, "has been profoundly humbling. Having a $500 million judgment hanging over you, even for a short time, clarifies what truly matters. It's not about fighting regulators, it's about building something meaningful and communicating honestly about it." Industry observers quickly noticed a subtle but significant shift. In the weeks that followed, Musk's social media posts, while still direct and occasionally provocative, showed more careful consideration. Tesla's quarterly investor calls, once punctuated by grand pronouncements, now leaned heavily into detailed technical explanations and transparency. Meanwhile, Judge Anthony Trenga became something of a legend in legal circles. Law schools requested him for lectures on judicial ethics. A New Yorker profile hailed him as the embodiment of an independent judiciary, immune to power, wealth, and political pressure. In an era of deepening cynicism, Trenga had demonstrated that the pursuit of truth and fairness still had a place, and that it could prevail. When later asked about the emotional moment in court, Judge Trenga offered a rare glimpse into his personal reflections. "In that moment," he said, "it wasn't Mr. Musk's statement alone that moved me, though it was appropriately reflective. What truly affected me was witnessing our system work as it should. How, when evidence is properly examined, it can cut through agendas and preconceptions to reveal truth. Even after nearly 2 decades on the bench, that still moves me." The case quickly ignited a broader national conversation about the limits of regulatory authority, the power of government agencies, and the responsibility of corporate leaders. Legal experts noted that Judge Trenga had accomplished a delicate balancing act, holding a powerful regulator accountable without undermining the essential role of oversight in corporate behavior. Perhaps most significantly, the case set a crucial precedent. Regulatory agencies would now face greater scrutiny over their internal processes, especially regarding how technical findings were incorporated or ignored in enforcement decisions. In response, several agencies proactively launched internal reviews of their case management systems to ensure that technical expertise could no longer be sidelined by enforcement agendas. For ordinary Americans who watched the drama unfold, the Case offered several enduring lessons. First, systems of accountability must apply in all directions, not just to the regulated, but to the regulators themselves. Second, even the most powerful individuals and institutions are not immune to truth and fairness. And third, genuine growth rarely comes from victory alone. It emerges through reflection, through confronting one's own limitations and responsibilities. In a rare joint interview months later, both Musk and Trenga, who had by then announced his retirement from the bench, reflected on the case that had initially placed them in dramatic opposition, before ultimately aligning them in a shared pursuit of truth. The easy path, Musk admitted, would have been to pay the fine and move on. Financially, it would have been a rounding error. But there was something at stake far more important than money: the principle that truth must matter, even when powerful institutions assert otherwise. For his part, Judge Trenga emphasized the critical importance of institutional humility. No entity, not a regulatory agency, not a court, not even the world's most valuable company, should ever be beyond accountability, he said. The moment we exempt anyone from scrutiny is the moment we begin to erode the foundation of a just society. Today, the case is studied in law schools across the country, cited as a defining example of both the fragility and the resilience of the American justice system. As one Harvard law professor summarized it, the Musk-Trenga case reminds us that justice isn't an outcome, it's a process, a relentless commitment to truth, no matter where it leads or whom it implicates. In a system often criticized for favoring the wealthy and powerful, the case offered a nuanced counterpoint, revealing that influence can create both unfair advantages and unique vulnerabilities, but that evidence and judicial integrity can still level the field. As the one-year anniversary of the historic hearing approached, both Musk and Trenga had moved on to new chapters. Musk had refocused more intently on his company's core innovations, stepping back from public controversies. Judge Trenga, meanwhile, had returned to academia, teaching judicial ethics at Georgetown Law School. The SEC had also undergone major changes, implementing sweeping reforms to ensure that technical findings could no longer be overridden by enforcement priorities. Reforms that legal experts said would ultimately strengthen, rather than weaken, the agency's legitimate oversight mission. In the end, what began as a seemingly straightforward case of regulatory enforcement against a controversial billionaire evolved into something far more significant: a moment of reckoning and renewal for institutions, for individuals, and for the ideals of justice they both serve. If you found this analysis valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'll continue bringing you the real stories behind the headlines and the vital lessons these pivotal moments offer for business, law, and society.